Do you think of yourself as a budding photographer? Do you have a passion within to share stories with the world? I'm so excited to share with you Ben Baker's story. Ben grew up in Adelaide and followed his dream all the way to New York, where he has photographed some of the most powerful and famous people in the world. Let's take a look at some of Ben Baker's incredible images now. benbakerstudio.com. Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Donald Trump, Scarlett Johansson, Ron Howard, Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, Tony Bennett, and Ethan Hawke. And that's just to name a few. Ben Baker. You're an Australian and an American portrait photographer based in between Sydney and Adelaide and have created iconic portraits of some of the world's most powerful people, including Presidents Bill Clinton, George Bush Jr., Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden.
Yes.
Can you describe the moments in your childhood that kindled your passion for photography?
I can remember when I was in high school, we had a really amazing high school art teacher. And my best friend, who's a filmmaker, he and I got into the classroom together and we kept helping each other get into photography and learn how to develop in the darkroom. And I think from there, I was hooked. I've been a photographer ever since.
Did you have inclinations before the darkroom, or was it just like at that split second you knew you wanted to do that?
I always knew I was a creative person. I was drawing and painting and making sculptures, and I was always inspired by people who didn't have a normal job, I guess. I liked the idea of having a really sort of different kind of a life and traveling around and meeting people. I didn't really know what that was. I was still pretty young. My dad worked in Aboriginal communities in the north of Australia, in Darwin. And I was lucky as a kid, he'd bring me out on these trips. And I got to see my dad working. He didn't work behind a desk. He would get in a car and drive from community to community and meet people and try to help organizations and communities come together. So I was always thought, wouldn't it be amazing to have a life where you could be traveling around and that could be your job instead of going to the same place every day. It's really hard for some people because some people don't know what they want to do when they're younger or even older, and I never really knew exactly. I thought a creative world and a camera was a great way for me to express myself. I got friends who work as actors or filmmakers or designers or painters, and they have a similar experience. Just a different way, I guess, of channeling the creative energy, you know?
Ben, in your case, whilst in your art class in high school at Christian Brothers College in Adelaide, your teacher recognised your interest and encouraged you. How important was it to have that input from your teacher at that point in time?
It was incredible. It was everything. It was very inspiring. I'm always incredibly grateful for teacher Peter Wheatley Dawson. He's always been a bit of a hero because I remember going to him one day and I would say, so what's the right answer? In like every other class, you're like, what's the right answer in maths or in science or in sports? There's a winner and the best time. And he said, well, that's up to you, isn't it? And I remember being so confused, but I realized that what an incredible answer, that it's really sort of a journey that you have to go on and something you discover that really sort of inspired. I was definitely confused when he told me that, but I'm very grateful for that kind of advice. And as long as you keep working hard at it, he will always expect me to be working really hard and do the best I could on all the projects. But it was the path that I could find for myself, so I was very lucky to have him.
In our research, we discovered that following high school, you were rejected by the local community college you applied to. Obviously, that rejection didn't set you back since you went on to become one of the world's best portrait photographers, Ben. At the point of rejection, that must have hurt, but did it make you more determined?
I think it did. I did ultimately. I was obviously very upset when I was given the letter that said I wasn't going to my school that I thought I'd get into. I did work really hard in high school and I did very well. I got very high marks. So I thought I had a place. I think maybe I thought it was just going to happen. So maybe I wasn't very happy at the time. I was pretty upset, but looking back now, maybe it was a good motivator to get me to realize that there are always other ways to find your success,
Can you describe your journey from working in Adelaide then Sydney, backpacking in South America to landing in New York, photographing some of the world's most powerful people.
So I realized I wanted to go overseas and try my luck in a big city in New York, but the journey needed to sort of have steps, I guess. So I went from Adelaide to being a photo assistant in Sydney, and I worked for very famous photographers there, very busy photographer, and that was hard, a lot of hard work, but looking back now, it was a good opportunity. And then I realized I wanted to have a break, and I just needed to rethink about things a bit and have a bit of a travel and see the world. So I thought, what was the most foreign place I could think of that was furthest away from Australia and might get me on the way to New York? And I thought, well, looked at South America on the map and went, that looks fascinating. So I spent a year going from the bottom of South America almost to the top. And then I went to New York, and again, in one of those lucky moments where I knew someone who helped get me a job in New York and a start and an opportunity. And I guess I didn't look back. So it hasn't always been easy, but it's definitely been a fun journey. When you look back and think, well, I wish I'd done this or done that, but life is a journey that you've got to sort of go forward and try your best. And sometimes you might not make the best decision, but that's the best decision you made that day, and about that time in your life. And those are the experiences that we all get to sort of, that's the joy of living and living a life that you want to keep growing and learning and having a laugh and having some joy. But along the way, you definitely have some, I've definitely had some moments that weren't as much fun, or challenges, or things that didn't go right. But I think without those downs, you're not going to enjoy the ups as much, So it's always that balance, right?
You can never have a mountain without a valley.
Exactly.
Who were you working for whilst the person who knew the person in New York?
Well, I got to New York, and I was looking for a job as a photo assistant. And there was a friend of mine, who's a really close friend of mine, who was in New York already, and he was a bit older than me. And he was already working for very famous photographers, Mary Ellen Mark, and he knew someone at Annie Leibowitz's studio, who's a very famous photographer. He worked at Vanity Fair, and he knew someone, and he was kind enough to help me and really make a big effort to change my life and give me an opportunity to go in and at least be given an opportunity to meet someone and have an interview. And I was very lucky to get a job from that interview. So there's always ways that people are going to try to help. It's really, I think you got to look back and hope that people can help you, or even some days reach out to people and ask them. And there's a lot of wonderful people in the world who will want to help if you've got the right level of hard work and sort of right intent. And I think people are out there. There's a lot of people in the world who want to help.
What was the best advice you ever got from Annie Leibovitz?
The best advice I got from Annie, well, it was a very intense place to work. When you're the biggest photographer in the world and you're going from magazine cover to magazine cover and big celebrities, there's not a lot of time, to sit around and chat. It's a pretty ferocious sort of environment, and you're working in a very big team. There's a lot of pressure and stress. But what I learned from Annie was, under all that stress and all that pressure, you've got to enjoy it. You've got to make the most. I watched her when she would photograph very, very powerful people, that she would find a way to connect with someone and try to humanize someone and find a way to take the stress out and the pressure off and have a lighthearted moment. And I think also too that she had this incredible balance of incredible intensity and focus, but also trying to make it a fun day for everyone on the crew. And it didn't always work that way. There were some days that were harder than others. But I definitely learned that you have to really apply yourself, and it's very serious. People see the joy and they see the fun and they see the excitement of these jobs. But like every job, it's a very serious job, and you've got to wake up every day with a very serious attitude, enjoyable attitude, but you've got to believe that you can make a great picture that day, and you've got to believe every day that you can. So I'm really lucky to have sort of watched a bit of a master at work. Learning to be a photographer, you've got to make mistakes. And even on Annie's crew, I made mistakes. Other photo assistants made mistakes, but we all have to work together, when you make a mistake, to correct it. Because there's no roadmap, it's not science, it's not mathematics, there's no perfect solution every day. And you've got to kind of keep going along the road and, putting a foot here and realizing, well, maybe that's not the best place to step, and this isn't the best place to step. I don't mean that in literal place to step, but that might be the best choice of where to put the light, or where to put the camera, or maybe you're not getting along with your subject and you've got to figure out all the way to keep working. And Annie was really good at sort of working along the way and always having a plan, but being willing and open that plan can suddenly change, because good things can happen as much as a challenging thing.
It really caught my attention in my research, a quote of Irving Penn's, quote, "I may not have style, but I know when a photograph has guts," end of quote. Ben, do you experience a similar emotion immediately after you've taken a photo?
I do. I think that's a really powerful quote. Great research. He's one a hero of ours, of so many photographers, because he found a really beautiful way of connecting with people and documenting that. Besides being a master technician and a master photographer, and his pictures are beautiful, but he had this amazing way to connect with humanity, and I think that's the moment. I've had so many photographs where I've gone in and I've got all the tricks and the toys and the tools and the fancy cameras, and the picture doesn't feel right. And then some days I've just taken a picture and it's the most simple and the most stripped back and the most basic, and there's this amazing connection between people. My job is not just to take a great picture and have a picture that people are proud of or everyone likes, is that the act or the process of photographing someone and the time you get to spend with someone is really lucky. I'm really lucky and grateful, and it's a precious little window that I get to spend with all sorts of people, not just famous people and powerful people, but all sorts of people around the world. That's the camera gives you this amazing window into people's lives.
Of all the images you have captured during your career today, is there one that you consider to be magical?
There is one picture that I think was the most important and pivotal in my career that people paid attention to, as I got to photograph the then Senator Barack Obama. Obviously went on to be the president, and it's a photograph of him outside pointing in the camera. And it was one of these magical moments that everything came together, and it wasn't a scripted moment, it wasn't a structured moment, it was just a moment of him and I together walking out of a room. He was about to get in a car, and he came over and he put his finger about 3 inches from the lens, and we shared this very, very quick, fleeting moment. And I remember knowing immediately something magical had happened, but I had to run inside and quickly get the pictures on the computer. And that night I had to fly to Paris for work on another project. And I remember sitting there and had my computer on the whole flight all night. I couldn't go to sleep because I just kept staring at this picture that came together. I was very lucky, but it was also great preparation. So I'm always grateful for that magical moment.
What was the longest time you ever got with President Obama or with Michelle, if it was that photo?
Whenever you get invited to the White House, it's always a very challenging time because they're so busy. You can imagine the president's schedule is pretty chaotic and pretty intense. So you wouldn't get very long. So when I photographed Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama, I had 6 minutes with them, and we had to come up with this amazing picture that told this incredible story. So there's an immense amount of pressure and stress to be able to come up with what looks like a very light-hearted moment between a president and a first lady. I'm enough to sign that photograph, the pointing photograph.
I remember.
And
that was a good photo.
Takes a lot to impress my family, but they'll finally impress. Here, it's looking here, a couple of eye contact to me. That's great. Excellent. Any other Chicago secrets? See, if you guys go to a restaurant, they just turns into this.
Well, the problem is there's a great restaurant called Topo Bombo.
It depends on what.
If you like,
It's not your favorite, right?
More eye contact, just kidding, everybody. That's fantastic, yep.
Everybody's like, oh!
So 6 minutes is kind of normal. I've been in the Oval Office and I was in there for sometimes 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 15 minutes. When I photograph Michelle on her own, I sometimes get 30 minutes. Normally, I was in the White House for most of a day. I'd get to go in and set up and get my lights and my cameras ready, but the time I'd get with them was quite short. So I became an expert at very quick photo shoots, which is fine. I actually found I quite enjoyed it because you get forced to be very direct and very clear and have good ideas, and became fun. When I have a very, very long photo shoot, I kind of get a bit bored now because I'm so trained at very stressful moments. But also when you're photographing people in those situations, in those environments, anything could happen. Like one day I was in the Oval Office and I was meant to do this big photo shoot, and there was this terrorist attack that didn't happen, thankfully. But the president had to have all the military people and all these very important people were standing at the doorway, and I had to accept that my photo shoot had to get cut short, which makes sense. I mean, photo's important, but security of the world, pretty important too. So.
When you're photographing some of the most powerful people in the world, how do you control your set with intense time constraints imposed on you by them?
Well, we try to get my first moment when I'm with them is to try to connect with them, try to separate them from their stress and their work, and try to have them connect with me. That's the hardest part. If I can get that right, it doesn't really matter if it's a short portrait, because if I've got good, honest connection between two people, you don't need a lot of time to take a very powerful picture, a great picture. Sometimes when I connect with these people and we're enjoying ourselves, they give me more time. I've had plenty of times, which is the best, when their person says, okay, that's over, and I've said, no, I like this guy. We can stick around. So that's the hope, that you always get a little bit more time.
Ben, you must be an incredibly spontaneous and focused photographer to cope with such high-pressure photo shoots with all that can go wrong and still deliver world-standard images.
Well, that is the job, isn't it? That's the expectation, that I'm a professional and I have to deliver. You know, I always say that I don't really get to choose the time or the place or the setting I don't get to control much, but I've got to deliver, and that's the professional photographer. That is my job as a professional photographer. I must provide them with a great cover of a magazine and great pictures on the inside, and now they need the pictures for the internet. There's a lot to deliver in a very short window of time, but if you come in and you're prepared and you've got a good team of people with you and you've got a good plan, but you've also got to be willing to let the whole plan suddenly turn left or turn right. And that's one of the biggest sort of process, I think, of learning and growing as a photographer, was you've got to have a set idea, but you've got to be willing to just be open to them. And maybe the person you're photographing that day or you're interviewing that day has an interesting insight that you never thought about. And if you didn't open that door or were willing to have that door be opened, and think of all the things you'd be missing. So that's where the plan is. And that's being professional and being prepared. And that's why I have all these years of training too, to build yourself up for those moments that you can be ready to smile, and inside maybe like, oh no, it's going a different direction. But on the outside, like, okay, great, let's go. Let's have fun with it. Let's see where it goes. And usually I look back at my best pictures and I was willing and open to new ideas or new experiences. So that's a good reminder to keep being open to new ideas.
What sacrifices do you feel you have made pursuing a career that requires you to just drop everything and go when an assignment comes up?
I've made big sacrifices, I think, as a photographer whose life can change in one phone call. I've not been able to have a very balanced life. Like, I see friends who take their kids to the playground and I'm always running around and the phone rings and I have to go somewhere. And even planning holidays or going catching up with friends, I'd always say to someone, yeah, I'd love to visit you, but things could change. Like when I was waiting for that photo shoot of Barack Obama, his people said, we're going to give you access to photo of Barack Obama, but it's going to happen in the next 6 months because it was a campaign, and we'll give you 24 hours notice, and it could be anywhere in America. So you can imagine every time I had to go somewhere, I was very upset and sort of nervous that the phone call would come in and I'd be too far away. It worked out just fine. But, and that's also why I took my little pictures of dogs with cones, because I'd love to have a dog, but I can't have a dog because I'm not in one place long enough. And if I'm going to have a dog, I think I want to be around it all the time.
I really like the photo of the cone dog where he has back legs as wheels. I remember I was watching a dog program and it was like very similar, just didn't have a cone and it had pink wheels at the front.
Yes.
It's really beautiful to see how humans care for dogs just like their children, as you would with any animal, but more so with dogs, because it's almost like man's best friend, as people say.
It is, yeah. I love those dogs are amazing because I look at you and there's so much life in them. My favorite dogs on that whole project were they call them the tripods. The guys that have girls or guys have 3 legs and they have one missing. And there were times when I would just be walking down the street with them photographing, and they were fine. They were running around with 3 legs and they just kept hopping around. And they didn't really seem to care. They were fine. They were really happy. It was a really great reminder, I think, as people, because sometimes our day's not perfect or our life's not going how we want it to get, and we get upset and angry. And then this dog's got 3 legs and it's running around, happiest dog in the world. So it's a good lesson.
With the fading of photography as we have known it from post-war to now, are you delving deep into your creative mind to reinvent what you aspire to deliver of your craft moving forward?
Wow, that's a very big question. It's a very, very challenging question. Yeah, I think all of us, as technology sort of has changed photography, because when I started, there was 3 magazines or a few more magazines and big cameras, and it was all a very structured world. And now, because of technology and the iPhone and the digital world, things have really changed so quickly, and I've been lucky to sort of be part of that, but also it's been challenging because my world has changed so much. And definitely right now, you've good instincts, because right now my world is really having to reinvent myself and rethink about what I want to do, how I want to work as a creative for the rest of my life. So I'm definitely going through some really challenging times of rethinking how I do things and what I do. But in many ways, it's probably great, and it probably forces you to keep evolving and think of new ways of telling stories. And there's so many great opportunities out there. People have TikTok channels and all these different channels, and they can talk to anyone in the world at any time, and they never got to do that before. Obviously, it makes it a bit daunting because there's all these ways that things can be challenging, but I think it's fun. I think it's great. But yeah, I'm definitely rethinking. I'm doing more movie work and video work and stills work. At the core, at the end of the day, I'm a storyteller, and I'm a storyteller about people. And I think I picked up a camera and I found that was my best way to tell those stories. But I'm really excited to tell stories in other ways. So even though it's challenging and hard, and sometimes I wished, why couldn't I just keep doing what I'm doing? This is the world we're living in now, so it's our job to keep finding new ways to sort of express ourselves. So yeah, it's definitely right now, it's a pivotal time, but I think in a few years we'll have a better idea.
Are you working on any special projects at the moment that you think could open up new doors to reinventing yourself? I am, and now I'm actually working, every time I do a series of portraits, I'm always doing a little film interview. It's fantastic to see your show, and I'm learning a lot by seeing how you're working as well, and how I get to interview people and tell stories. So I'm trying very hard to add things to what I do. So I'm writing stories. I've done a creative writing, done studies and doing written word and the moving image, and I'm teaching myself to be an editor and all these different things that I never thought I'd do before. I thought I'd be a photographer forever. So what I'm trying to do is to complement. I'll always be at the core a portrait photographer. What do you enjoy doing in your downtime?
I've learned I remember photographing a woman a few years ago in New York, and she asked me a very challenging question. And she said, "Tell me your hobbies." And I was about to tell her my hobbies, and she goes, "Stop, you can't use the word photography." And of course, I was about to say, I collect photography books, and I like going to museums. Museums are okay, because that's pictures and photographs and paintings. And she said, "What do you do in your spare time that's not connected to photography that gives you joy?" And I think I was too focused on my work, and I didn't have enough a world around me. So I was in New York, and New York's an island, and I always wanted to learn how to sail. So I went sailing off down the bottom of Manhattan, and that gave me so much fun, because it gave me a release and a joy that had nothing to do. I'd get on the boat with my sailing friends, and they didn't care what I did at work, and I didn't. I care, we all care about each other, but it wasn't about work and success and all these things in our life that we try to judge ourselves on. I was just getting on a boat and making sure we had a really fun afternoon and spending time with people who were good people. So,
what advice would you give to a young person aspiring to enter the photography industry, and what things they could expect from your experience?
My advice would be to think of yourself as a storyteller and not just use photography. So if you can pick up a video camera, if you can write stories, if you can draw, I think the more multi-skilled you are, the more you can harness different storytelling techniques and ways to do it. I think you're going to have an amazing journey going forward. But maybe don't just limit yourself to just photographs, because I think you've got to be able to do more than that. And I think you'll end up having more fun anyway if you do that. Because then you wake up and you're like, not just taking photographs, maybe you're writing and drawing or making a movie or doing an animation. So think of yourself as a more sort of a storyteller that has different platforms.
How would you advise a young person getting started in the photography industry?
Definitely go and work for photographers and understand what it is, because I think it's very hard to do it just on your own. Knowing different people and working for different people gives you a chance to see what their life is like and what they're learning. And so it's not just about taking a photograph. Like when I'm actually taking photographs, that's only a very small part of my week. So the rest of it is like you're doing. You do a lot of research for interviews and preparation and thinking and planning. And the photography, when I'm taking my pictures, I call it my happy place, because it's my joy. I really love doing it. But I think if you can go to a good school, maybe learn, I think it's great that people go to university or have photo assisting years, and just be a bit patient, because if you're going to be good at something, it's going to take a long time to be good at something, and realize that even though we're sort of in this world right now where things happen so quickly and we have news, Instagram and TikTok and all these things moving so fast, being skillful at something takes a long time. So it's having patience and having a bit of self-belief that it's okay, it won't happen today, it may not happen overnight. things are going to happen if you keep doing the right thing. But again, exploring different ways of telling stories. So get in there, work really hard, but realize that's a long road, it's a long journey. So just be kind to yourself and be patient.
That's very insightful, thank you. Ben, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me today. I'm sure that these insights will excite and inspire the next generation of photographers.
Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do. It's really amazing to see how much work you put into your projects and interviews. That's why people see what I do. They see just the photograph. But I do a lot of research. I work very, very hard, and it's impressive to see how much work you've put into this too. So thank you for taking the time and caring.
I have a gift for you.
All right, I love gifts. Who doesn't love a gift?
Cone doggy.
Oh, wow.
I made him.
You made a cone dog?
Yes.
That's incredible. You made this guy?
Yes.
That's amazing. Who we got?
This is Buddy.
Buddy, yeah, g'day, buddy. Guess what we better do, buddy? We better take a picture. Wait. I know. Why wouldn't you? What are you doing, Ben? Portrait time. Smile there, Buster. Oh, look at that. Yep. That's it. See? Happy cone dogs. Up, 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 up.